What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Better week for waivers this week. Still not that incredible. Most of the top options are ones we've already been over to some degree, and nothing happened this week where a new player has become a really strong option worth a number one claim. So if you are going to use number one claim on someone this week, it is probably from someone we've already mentioned in previous weeks. We'll start off with the top three running backs. All three are players that are probably rostered in most competitive leagues, especially 12 and 14 team leagues. But for those of you in like 8, 10 team leagues, maybe a little bit less competitive, 12 team leagues, I would say Braylon Allen, Chase Brown, and Bucky Irving. Those are the top three options this week. I'll have the rest of season rankings updated tomorrow afternoon, so Tuesday afternoon. So check out my exact rankings there. My expectation would be that they'd be ranked in that exact order I just mentioned. Again, Braylon Allen, then Chase Brown, then Bucky Irving. Closer between Irving and Brown, and to be honest, I could see it going either way. There are cases for each one of them. It would really come down to who you think is a higher ceiling. I would just say the one on the Bengals is a higher ceiling. But yeah, all three are fantastic pickups if they are available. Braylon Allen, honestly, at times outplaying Breece Hall right now. I still think Breece Hall is the better running back. He's still the one you obviously want in fantasy because he comes with a much better receiving profile. But at this point, Braylon Allen's playing well enough to where I would expect maybe not a 50-50 split rest of season, but a much closer split than we thought going into the season. Then Chase Brown, been incredible this season. He's leading all qualified running backs in yards per carry, fourth in rushing yards over expectation per carry. Only a matter of time before Chase Brown is the lead back of the Bengals. When that happens, he's going to be a weekly must start. And then Irving outplaying Rachaad White. White had a better game this last week, but the snaps are trending in Irving's favor. White only had 12 touches to Bucky Irving's 11, so that split is also shrinking. It's basically all three of these backs started the season in more minor roles, and then they're seeing their workloads increase because they're playing so well. So not good news for the starters on all those teams, and all three running backs that whether they become the starter through injury or whether you need them as buys come, as injuries continue to happen, all three are incredibly valuable. Again, probably not available in a bunch of competitive leagues, but there are definitely leagues out there. I checked the roster percentage in each. There's a lot of leagues out there where they are available. At wide receiver, your top two options are Dontavian Wicks and Josh Downs. Wicks was one of our favorite picks this summer, but he opened the season in a bit of a frustrating role. So you have Dobbs. We talked about this every week, and basically from week one on, the roles have remained the exact same. So they have not been shifting anything around. It is Dobbs as the clear every down, like number one wide receiver, just their X wide receiver, not necessarily the most valuable in fantasy, but the one that's out there every single snap. Then you have Reed, their most valuable in fantasy, not out there every snap, but out there most passing snaps, but as their clear slot wide receiver. And when he's out there, he's much more of a focus than the other receivers. And then you've got Watson and Wicks, both in a very strong role if they were the starter. The problem has been that they've rotated that starting position, that second outside wide receiver, combined good production, playing a lot of snaps. But when you got two people basically splitting the snaps, both have a lower floor and lower ceiling. This week, we see Christian Watson suffer the high ankle sprain. So now we're going to have Wicks basically 75-80% of the snaps over the next month plus or so, makes him a viable starter every week. And if he plays well, which I think he's going to over that month, there's a chance that, maybe he's not the clear starter where, Watson returns and Watson's only playing 10% of the snaps, but maybe he maintains instead of splitting, maybe it's like 70-30 in Wick's favor. There's at least the chance that happens. But regardless, if we're going to get, starting outside wide receiver on the Packers offense for the next month and a half, that needs to be rostered in all formats. And then Downs had like a mini breakout game. I don't even want to say mini, really. I mean, 8 for 82 in a score is like a really strong stat line. But we talked about this last week, being like, listen, he comes back from the high ankle sprain. He gets a 29% target share. That's great. It was just they didn't have very many targets a week ago, and so the production wasn't like amazing. Bumps up to 32% target shares last week. Again, production comes along with it now that they had more volume. To be honest, his outlook looks better if Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback, a trend we have seen across the league with defenses shifting to these more too high looks and being a little bit more confusing, especially for young quarterbacks. We're seeing quarterbacks that have been in the league for a while that understand you just got to take the yards that the defense is giving you. These quarterbacks that recognize blitzes better, that are taking what the defense shows them, they're just performing better across the league, right? So we will see better passing production from Flacco with all these pass catchers if he's a quarterback. Now, we have no idea. The initial reports from AR is that he might not miss any time. He's still, like, between him and Flacco, obviously AR is the one you would want to start in terms of, like, starting Anthony Richardson versus starting Joe Flacco. Flacco's not going to run for any yards, so he has to have like 302 touchdowns to really be worth starting, whereas Richardson can get more done on the ground. You'd want him. But if you have Pittman, if you have, I don't know how many you have Alec Pierce, but if you have Alec Pierce, if you have Downs, you want Joe Flacco as a starting quarterback because you're not losing any of that rushing. And to be honest, he's the better passing quarterback between the two of them. So we will see what happens there. I think regardless, you want Downs. So no matter what we think is going to happen with Richardson, like you still want to be rostering Josh Downs. I would say for Wicks and Downs, it depends on your league size. It depends on your team need. But in general, on average, I'd say between like 5 and 8% of your fab. Again, I don't think either one is worth the number one claim, but if you wanted to use the number one claim on Wicks because you have buys coming up, you have injuries, maybe you drafted AJ Brown, you drafted Puka, you drafted Cooper Kupp, you drafted Rashee Rice, all these awesome wide receivers that are hurt and you need help. Well, now maybe, use number one claim on someone like Wicks who's going to help you over the next month. And honestly, even Downs is going to be helpful this season. Those are the clear 5, though. Those are the clear 5, like top options across the board. Behind them, we're going to talk about quarterback streaming next, then defense streaming. Then we'll go back to running back and wide receiver. When we go back to running back and wide receiver, I would say between like 2 and 4, maybe up to 5 with the first player we talk about. But in that general range of like, if you want to spend a few percent of fab, if you want to spend like a number 3, 4, 5 claim on the rest of the running backs and wide receivers we go over, fine. Again, it's going to come down to your team need, your league size, your bench spot size, all those sorts of things. But they're definitely less valuable than the 5 we just went over. So, quarterback streaming. Poor this week in terms of pure streaming options for week 5. You've got Justin Fields versus the Cowboys. You've got Sam Darnold versus the Jets. And you've got Andy Dalton at the Bears. So, as you can see, not good matchups. Not where we're like jumping up and down being like, let's go. We've got the smash spot on a quarterback that's hot. But realistically, just given how the quarterback market is looking with a ton of underperforming quarterbacks, we're kind of in a situation where I don't want to drop a lot of these starters, right? A lot of these starters that are just underperforming, I don't want to straight up drop them. So this season, it's a little bit more viable, especially right now, to maybe roster some of these streaming options, to do like we said with last week with Richardson. We listed off like 4 quarterbacks last week. I was good streaming over Richardson. I mean, that's kind of what we should maybe be doing going forward. Take these quarterbacks that are hot, that are doing well, start them for the time being, bench the starter you had that's maybe not doing really anything right now, and just see. Again, I don't want to straight up bench some of these guys we drafted in rounds like 4 through 7, but if they're not going to do anything, it's okay to go to some of these streaming options ahead of them. Again, though, this week, not amazing in terms of the matchup, so it depends which quarterback you have if you're going there versus streaming option, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that like these guys are performing well and some of these other starters are not. But with Fields, really good. I would say really good in like the second half. Kind of shaky in the first half last week, but once they fell behind, he was really good. And he can afford to have, some mistakes that Fields is going to always have because of the mobility. He has the 2 rushing touchdowns, runs for like 55 yards, still throws for 300 because it was a great matchup for George Pickens and getting that ball a little bit deeper downfield, just given how the defense of the Colts operates. Weaker matchup this week, but again, the mobility, the expected game script of maybe trailing, it's a good spot for Justin Fields in terms of his ability to just rack up some rushing yards and rack up passing. On top of that, Sam Darnold, again, awful matchup against the Jets. You never want to stream defenses or stream quarterbacks against the Jets. But 3 more passing touchdowns than any other quarterback in the NFL. He's a quarterback 5 in fantasy. Again, going to project poorly this week, but I would 100% roster him, include him as a stash. He was one of my favorite second quarterbacks this season, ranked him way higher than a lot of other people, almost became my most rostered quarterback on Underdog. So this isn't coming out of nowhere. We knew that any quarterback that is half competent in this system with these players is going to perform in fantasy. So don't think that it's oh, this is Sam Darnold. This is someone who's going to completely fall apart at some point. The starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings is going to crush in fantasy if they are half competent at football, and Sam Darnold is definitely half competent at football. Then after him, definitely a lower confidence play being on the Panthers, but Andy Dalton at the Bears, again, tough spot. Buys until week 11 though, and so if you wanted to, because Andy Dalton's going to be the quarterback for the season, you have to think that, right? Maybe there's a chance that we're in week 12, 13, 14, you get into that range, and they're okay, we're out of the playoffs. We got to at least see, can Bryce Young do anything this season? And then maybe they go back to him. But until they're completely out of everything, you got to think this coaching staff doesn't want to all get fired. So they're going to go with Andy Dalton. He's been 100 times better than Bryce Young. So again, this matchup is bad. But if Andy Dalton's going to be the quarterback, if they have a good coaching staff like we talked about before, and they have, Jonathan Brooks coming back, that's going to help out the offense. I think there's just enough going on to where if you're going to roster 2 quarterbacks and stream, I think Andy Dalton is a pretty good option rest of the season. For defense streaming, it's not great, but there's 3 okay options. So you've got Broncos versus the Raiders, I think it's the top option. Seahawks versus the Giants, a little bit depending on what happens tonight, but I think the matchup is strong enough. Seahawks, good enough defense where they're a good option. And then the Dolphins at the Patriots. Raiders have allowed the 8th most pressure in the NFL, and the Broncos have forced the 6th most pressure while also ranking 2nd in EPA per play allowed, including the 2nd best pass defense in the NFL. They also have a fantastic shutdown corner. They're just a good defense. Everyone knows that the Broncos are a good defense, and so getting a pretty good matchup with the Raiders there. The Giants have allowed the 12th most pressure and rank 11th worst in EPA per play. Seattle, again, plays tonight. We will see if their defense continues playing well, but they have forced through, obviously, 3 weeks, 8th most pressure in the NFL, actually rank 1st in EPA per play allowed. That'll probably drop a little bit, but they're a good enough defense where I think they can force some mistakes from the Giants, especially if Neighbors misses. Neighbors, the concussion, usually you do miss 1 game with concussion, but it was the Thursday game, so he's got a little bit more time to recover. We'll see on that front, but even if Neighbors plays, it's a good matchup there. And then, of course, we all know how bad the Patriots are. Dolphins, not that good of a defense, but anyone has a good chance at a good game against the Patriots, and it's likely that if the first 2 are rostered, that the Dolphins are not rostered. So they at least give you an out, someone to play. All right, back to running back. Again, I don't think anyone we're about to go over is someone you have to aggressively target in free agency, but we definitely have some okay options. So Trey Sermon leads the group, clear backup to Jonathan Taylor. There's one report out there that says JT is going to be fine. There's another report that says he has a mild high ankle sprain. I think they're just getting second opinions. We will see what happens. He's hurt. He obviously is hurt to some degree. Maybe that he's going to be fine comment is more it's not a super long-term injury, but it's not something you want to hear if you have Jonathan Taylor. Tough rushing matchup against the Jaguars this coming week, but if JT were forced to miss, you've got Sermon in line for 14 to 16 opportunities as a general range, even in a relatively difficult matchup, even not being a fantastic running back himself, he would be someone that would be viable to start, which means he has to be rostered. After Sermon, you have Kareem Hunt of all people. Steele lost a fumble, I believe on their opening drive. They immediately went to Kareem Hunt. After that, got more touches. I truly have no idea what the split's going to look like long term, especially once Clyde's able to return, then especially once they start getting Pacheco back. Because remember, when Pacheco returns as well, he's not going to be 100%. It's going to take him some time to ramp up. But they trust Kareem Hunt. He gained 75 yards and 17 opportunities. If that's going to continue, he's going to be a viable start. I just don't buy that they're actually going to like lean on him all year. So I think I would just probably let someone else go after him. I think someone's going to drop a ton of fab on Hunt this week. At this point, the Chiefs are probably going to use a 3 running back committee for the rest of the season. That's not a deal for fantasy. And that's my assumption, not even factoring in Clyde, not even factoring that Pacheco's going to come back. Like even what they have right now, it'll probably be a committee. I don't know. Like you can spend a few percent of fab on Kareem Hunt. I don't know that it's really worth it. I don't know that we're ever really going to trust him. After Hunt, you have Algier, played 38% of the snaps this last week. That was a season high, gained 80 yards on 10 touches. I don't think this is a Braylon Allen situation where like Braylon Allen, they can't keep him off the field because he's playing so well. It's like you have to give him touches. I think it was Algier, like that was the case this week, that he was playing really well. They wanted to kind of keep him going. He had a few nice runs. I think if he keeps doing that, it could turn into a Braylon Allen situation. But I think this was like one hot week that, again, if it happens again, maybe they go to him, but not someone that like Braylon Allen we could consider starting at this point. Like the amount of touches he's getting, I don't think we're actually considering starting. Algier, wouldn't be surprised if we went back to like 20% snap share next week, but also someone who should be rostered in 100% of leagues of all league sizes because he's a running back 1 if Bijan got hurt. And then he could be a fill-in as, again, buys are finally here. We've got injuries as well, so we're going to have to actually start to go in some very gross options at running back. Alexander Madison, this one makes me a little bit sad, but he's an option. He's playing well. He is honestly outplaying Zamir. I thought Zamir was going to look so much better this season. Like, he looks bad. Like, he does not look like a good running back right now. I don't know what's going to happen because like the split is still pretty clearly in favor of Zamir. But if Zamir keeps playing this bad and Madison keeps playing as well as he is, that split might get a lot closer to 50-50. We also know the Raiders aren't that good, and Zamir is more of a play when the game is close or when they're winning. There's going to be a lot more games where it's a Madison game because they're losing. So Madison, worth going after. Again, not someone I think is that good of a running back, not someone I think we're going to really want to be trusting. Like if you build a championship team, is he running back 2? Probably not. So if you're going after him, it's not amazing, but a decent option because I think the split might start to trend more in his direction. Behind Madison, you have to think Tank Bigsby is going to be more of an option going forward. Like he has looked at a completely different running back this season. If he can stay healthy, then there's no reason why ETN should be overloaded with touches. Tank is averaging 8.2, I think it's like 8.19 yards per carry this season. It's not that ETN has looked bad. It's just that we know that he broke down last season because of touches. They've said that as well. And so they wanted to last season not overload him. They just had to because Tank was literally one of the worst running backs in the NFL. Now he looks like one of the better running backs. Like obviously, like he's not actually one of the better running backs in the NFL, but he looks fantastic. And there's no reason why they should be going away from him. So they're probably going to keep ETN at 11 to 14 touches every week. We can't start Tank right now, but again, injuries, bye weeks, all going to be racking up, all going to be happening over the next 1 to 2 months. Like with Algier, it's like, well, maybe if you had to, you could start Tank Bigsby as a low-end running back too. But the upside, if ETN got hurt, Tank Bigsby is going to be incredible. Only other running back you're really looking at is Roschon Johnson. They mentioned giving him more run. We kind of figured that would be more at the expense of Swift. It was not. It was at the expense of Khalil Herbert. They went to a 2 running back rotation. Worth monitoring. That team was gross, right? In a 3 running back committee on a poor rushing offense, on a team that's struggling, not something you want to invest in. 2 running back committee on the same things, still probably not something we want to invest in, but running backs obviously typically a weak position. If it's a 2 running back committee, if they can figure themselves out a little bit as the season goes along, maybe we have some upside here. Also, Swift had a great game, but he's been trash through 3 weeks. So there's no reason to think that he's going to be great for the rest of the season. Like maybe he will be, but there's also a chance that they go to a 2 running back committee, that Swift starts to be bad again, and they go to Roshan as more of that lead back, use a little bit in the receiving game as well. I don't think you have to aggressively target him. I think I have like a 1% recommendation for Fab. Like, it's something where it's like, if you've got that roster spot, you want to take a chance on the upside, go for it. But if you like your team, you like your bench, there's no reason to drop a player you really like for Roshan. I still don't think the upside is that incredible. Wide receiver. Your second tier of wide receiver is Wandale and Xavier Legette. And then your third tier is Darnell Mooney, Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, and Jalen Polk. And then Juju, I guess you can throw on top of that as well, but we'll get to him. So Wandale, 22 targets over the last 2 weeks, 28% target share on the season. And then you have that contingent upside of, at least for this week, if Neighbors were to miss, you have like a 35% target share. It's crazy the amount of targets just being funneled to Wandale and Neighbors, but especially in a full PPR league. Like, Wandale is getting so many looks, and they're not high, like, upside looks, but they're low ADOT looks. And so if he's going to get 22 targets, he's going to catch a relatively decent percentage of those. He can bust off a long run. He can score a touchdown. But even just racking up those receptions, it is valuable in fantasy. Definitely go after him. And then Xavier Legette, 87% snap share in the first game with no Thielen, 6 for 66 and a touchdown. He's clearly the wide receiver 2. That was on 10 targets as well. Clearly there 2 behind Deontay Johnson. Clearly, again, the offense looking so much better with Andy Dalton at quarterback. He's a great option as well. Third tier, again, there's like a drop down between these guys. Darnell Mooney playing virtually every snap, 7 targets a game since week 2. No real upside. Some weekly upside if he hits for a long play, but no season long upside in the fact that it's like, if you're in a 3 wide receiver league, if you have 2 flex spots, maybe he's kind of your last guy in, but there's no world where this kid is a wide receiver 2 rest of season. Tutu Atwell, Cup. And this is really for Atwell and Whittington. Cup going to miss at least the next 2 games. Puka going to miss at least the next month. And you've got Tutu, played 80% of the snaps this last week, had 4 for 93 in week 3, 4 for 82 in week 4. I don't know that you can trust him long term because it's more of those big plays. And then, of course, when these other guys come back, you can't trust any of these guys. But for the short term, if he's going to keep playing 90% of the snaps, if he's going to keep having this like deeper ADOT role, if you needed a flex option over the next 2 to 4 weeks, Tutu's not bad. And then Whittington, we were on him in week 3. It was really weird they didn't go to him for the snaps, but his snap share jumped way up this last week. 8 targets, caught 6 for 62. Again, I don't know the reasoning behind not going to him week 3. Maybe just wasn't quite ready yet. But I believe there was a stat out there where he leads all round like 3 on wide receivers and receiving yards this season. It was something like that, but like, we have to remember he was still a later round pick. He still wasn't supposed to be amazing, but let's be honest. If he's going to play, near 90% of the snaps, they're going to have to throw it this week against Green Bay. Sneaky option. Again, still more of a deeper league option for him, but I like the talent. I think he is a nice sleeper. Jalen Polk, we've talked about him every week. The production is not there yet, but finally this week, they went to him a little bit more, 83% of snaps, led the team in routes. That's just going to continue trending in the positive direction. He's going to be an every down receiver very soon, maybe as soon as this week. And then once Drake May is back, once the schedule finally opens up, remember for the Patriots, we want Brissett to just be the quarterback for the first 5 or 6 weeks, because the first 5 or 6 weeks of the Patriots was brutal. Such difficult defenses, good pass rushes. You watch Brissett out there, right? He's getting absolutely annihilated at times. You don't really want May going out there and getting hit that much. Over the second half of the season, opens up a little bit. The Patriots, they still have the hardest schedule in the NFL, but it opens up a little bit for them. So once we see May take over around mid-season, once Polk is out there every snap, that's when we're going to finally start to see the Jalen Polk that I think people are going to be very surprised with how good he is. So I would be rostering him before that breakout happens. And then, as I alluded to before, Juju, I can't do it in any format. I'm in a 16-team league. I don't think Juju's rostered. I'm not even going to go after him. I just can't do it. I do think Kansas City's only out at this point is a trade for a wide receiver. They were struggling before they lost their best playmaker, and then they lost Rashee Rice. I haven't seen it confirmed yet, but it seems like he's torn his ACL, going to be out for the season. Obviously, Kelsey's going to be needed more. Kelsey's not dust. It was just that they were kind of saving him for the playoffs. They're going to need him more. But at the end of the day, they need another receiver. I know Juju's going to be better in full PPR now that more snaps have opened up, especially slot snaps, but I can't do it. I'm not rostering Juju Smith-Schuster. And then finally, only seeing 2 tight end options this week. Cade Otton, he's been playing 90+% of the snaps, 17 targets over the last 2 weeks. He was someone that's like, he was a trendy sleeper at times, and to start the season, it was kind of weird how low his target share was, just given he was out there all the time. And it's like, you've got obviously Evans and Godwin, but like, it's not like they have like 5 wide receivers they've been using. So it was a little bit weird. Finally going to him a little bit more. Tight end's a wasteland, so definitely an option. And then Tucker Kraft playing 80+% of the snaps when healthy. Strong game this last week. I'm hopeful it'll continue because you guys know he's my most rostered tight end on Underdog. I thought he was just worth, 18th round. We know he's going to be out there a ton. Can he catch some touchdowns, have some good games? Even I know that it's like, most weeks he's probably going to be around like 2 to 4 targets. And so good game this last week. Wouldn't be shocked if he has like 2 for 20 next week. You don't probably need to go after him, but if you have no other options, not a bad one there. So I have a full ordered list with fab recommendations on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But I would also use what comes out tomorrow. The rest of season rankings are awesome. That really will help you with waiver decisions, trade decisions as well. The week 5 rankings will also help you with streaming decisions and also some start sit decisions when they're on free agency too. And then please look at the week 5 positional reports. It's a really, really good report for each position, just in terms of how valuable players are. And it's much more valuable of a report from now on. So to start the season, a lot of the stuff was the same. You're seeing expected fantasy points per game, trailing. Well, that's the same over the first couple of weeks of the season. But as we work into week 5, 6, 7, 8, we're going to start to see new things, right? What players are trending up, trending down? What players are good in points per game but have missed some time? What players are consistent over the whole season? Like the trade models can get better. Like everything's going to start to improve. You're going to see new features on it as well. So it's going to be a very, very valuable weekly report. Please, if you have access to the site, look at that. It's very, very valuable to look at. So I'll be back Wednesday with a trade video. If you watched this far, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new here, but I'll see you all on Wednesday.